What is up, everybody, and welcome to Celtics Talk Weekly Postgame Live. The Celtics take home an invigorating victory to end the 2023 calendar year, a win 134-101 over the San Antonio Spurs down in San Antonio, Texas. The Celtics' first game against generational talent and a player we're going to see for many, many years, Victor Wembanyama. And this game, guys, was not even close. The Celtics head into now 2024, 26-6 on the 23-24 season, and they do it in dominant fashion after tonight's win in San Antonio. Your guys' thoughts. We'll start with you, Justin, as Justin joins us here after a month's absence. This feels like we've just added an all-star back into our roster, guys. When we look at the injury report every single day, you guys know I send you guys an availability report almost every game, and it looks just like the Celtics injury report. And Justin, we've been looking at his name every day the past month, and he finally makes his return on New Year's Eve against the Spurs. And I, for one, am glad that Justin's back. And we're going to start with him and his initial thoughts on tonight's game, and then we'll go to Ian after him. But Justin, welcome back. And what do you got to say about the Celtics right now?
Thank you, Seamus. It's good to be back. Listen, we kind of talked about this before we hit record, right? Like, this was a game where the Celtics are a better team than the San Antonio Spurs, and it showed it here tonight. It was a wire-to-wire win for the Celtics. I think their biggest lead, which we'll get to in the lead tracker, was, I think, nearly 40 points. It had to be up there. Just a dominating performance tonight. You know, it was funny. Kristaps Porzingis had an off night. No Drew Holiday, but Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown stepped up. Both had very efficient nights. Derek White continuing his all-star campaign, even had a chance in his former arena and his former hometown. And then Luke Kornet, again, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on in the show. Luke Kornet, another stellar performance tonight off the bench from him, 12-4. So just an all-around very efficient night for the Celtics. Had a lot of contributions, showed really how deep this team is in that six straight wins to go into 2024, Ian.
Hey, I mean, this is what you got to do. If you're a team like this and you're playing a team like the San Antonio Spurs, who, you know, they have Wembanyama. He's great. Devin Vassell is a really nice player. But outside of those two guys, they don't really have a lot of good players, and they're kind of not a good team. So if you're the Celtics, you got to go in there and you got to take care of business. And this is just what the good teams do. They blow out the teams who are in the lower part of the standings in the NBA, and that's what we saw tonight. Tatum, his three ball looked really good tonight. He shot efficiently. That was really great. Jaylen Brown, I don't know, over the last month, he's found a way to make the game just look so effortless. Like, anytime Jaylen Brown shoots the ball, it just looks like it's gonna go in. And he's playing like he knows he's the best player on the floor every night, which is huge for the Celtics. And like you said, Luke Kornet, I mean, against the Toronto Raptors, he had 20. Like, I don't think anybody saw that coming. And then tonight, he went out there, outplayed Wembanyama, and yeah. So, and Derek White's an all-star. Those are my takeaways from this game.
Yeah, Derek White, I feel as if his all-star campaign may be on another level after tonight, because we saw this man receive all-star chants in his former arena, in which I think we all see a former MVP level of player, Kawhi Leonard. We know his exit was a little bit different from Derek White's. However, he receives boos every time he goes there, and Derek White literally receives all-star chants upon his arrival this month, and ahead of what could potentially be now his all-star debut and what is now his all-star campaign. And for that to happen, that's pretty big. Everybody's been talking about it. JJ Redick, one of the more notable Derek White all-star supporters. The Derek White all-star campaign is certainly alive and well. And I know a lot of people are talking about, like, oh, will coaches, I was even wanting to talk about, will coaches pick him to be an all-star as a reserve, because he's likely not going to be a starter. And I don't know. They log onto the internet, they see articles, they read different things for as much as we think they don't. They do. And ultimately, Derek White, this is another moment for his All-Star campaign, receiving All-Star chance in San Antonio. But the Celtics, this is really the reason he was able to sustain those All-Star chants in San Antonio. There was really nothing to root for tonight for the San Antonio Spurs fans because, man, this game got out of hand quick for the Spurs and the Celtics. And the Celtics go on a complete avalanche run in the second half. They go up by as much as 37 in this contest. And a lot of that work comes after halftime. Your guys' thoughts on the second half, because I think we can all say the second half, that was a runaway freight train effort by the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing as well, is third quarters are known to not be Boston's stronghold, but it seemed like after the half, the Celtics really came together. It was late where they extended that 15-point lead out before the half, but Boston really came together and just dominated. I don't know what the message was in the locker room other than we are the better team. We need to show that, and we need to come out with some force and some aggression. Celtics did that. I think what really elevated the Celtics tonight is the fact that they absolutely demolished the San Antonio Spurs on the glass, on the rebounding numbers. They had out rebounded them total wise, 57-39, 13-9 on offensive, 44 to 30 rather on the defensive glass. Celtics controlling the glass, getting their second chance points, and as you see here, a 37-point advantage at one point for the Celtics. They were all over this one tonight, especially in that second half, as you mentioned, Seamus.
Yeah, this was a wire-to-wire win. This was one of the first games this season, probably since like the time the Celtics blew out the Pacers by 50 something. This is probably the first time since then that like I didn't feel like I was gonna have a heart attack watching the Celtics play. This was just a fun, calm, game to watch, and that's always great when you get to just kind of sit back and relax and just kind of appreciate how good the team is. And this was with no Drew Holiday, so
right. Porzingis also did not have a strong game at all either. It's funny, Seamus and I were talking throughout the game, and Kristaps Porzingis had this awful start shooting the ball. He was 0 of 5, and then he decides to chuck up a 94-footer. And had zero concern about the shooting percentage. But I mean, like that it just goes to prove the point of like how deep this Celtics team is and how really well constructed this Celtics team is, right? On a night where no Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis isn't having a great night. We get guys like Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett, who's been phenomenal these last two games. Even the All-Stars, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown had efficient nights. Just goes to show you how dominating this team really is.
Yeah, it's every single game when this team, there have been multiple occasions this season when this team sees at least one of their starters or one of the top 6 out. At the beginning of the season, we kind of looked at some of those games and went, oof, geez, the record here is not exactly pretty. But at that point, it was really only a 15 to 20 game sample size. And so far now, we have another 10 games on to that sample size. And through those 10 games, the Celtics, every single time somebody is out of the lineup, somebody else is stepping up. And to add on to this point, too, the bench unit, when they come into a game, it doesn't feel as if the Celtics are completely losing hold of the rope anymore. And also in garbage time, in which we've now had a couple of stints with, the bench, they seem to be a more of an elite garbage time bench. Now, I'm not talking about Horford, Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and any of the fringe guys who come in during the third quarter. That's when we're not losing the rope. But I'm talking about late in game when we're really just playing the game out. Our bench guys are simply better than the rest of everyone else's bench guys. And so far in this season, the Celtics have been the most dominant team. I mean, they've been the most dominant team by far. Even the teams who rival us in record have not been as dominant as the Celtics. And this was the most dominant performance outside of that Indiana performance in which you mentioned, Ian, that the Celtics just, there was no doubt about this one whatsoever. And I joked on my page, this one, and down in San Antonio facing the Spurs might be the best opponent for any team to face from an entertainment standpoint. Every fan base can feel good when they play the Spurs. The Spurs right now are 5-27. 5-27. But they have that one player, right, guys? One player. Victor Wembanyama, generational rookie. This player, this man, this freak of nature, this all-time great eventually, if he stays healthy, basketball player, he's putting on a show every single night, with or without the stats. Just seeing him play out on a basketball court is absolutely ridiculous. Yet at the same time, every time your team faces him, they get a win. Every time.
Right.
Because the Spurs are that bad this season. And we all saw tonight, the Spurs are not constructed correctly around Wemby. But fortunately for the Celtics and us as fans, we're totally past that stage and never even had to be in that stage with Brown and Tatum.
Right. I think also if you're Spurs fans, like especially tonight, you're really grateful for what you just saw, right? Like let's face it, like yes, you do want to win the game, but at the same time, you got to watch your all-star, your rookie, your number one pick, your future of franchise have a really, really good game against the best team in the league, who is also having a really, really good game. So like yes, your team got blown out, but Wembanyama continues to put up numbers against really, really solid teams. Remember earlier in the season when Wembanyama played the Phoenix Suns? Wemby had an unbelievable game. So, like for him to have these types of games against these really worthy opponents is really, it's something to really look at. But again, you mentioned Seamus. This is not a well-constructed team around Victor Wembanyama. Yes, this has only been not even half a season. But, the Spurs team, if they can get the right pieces, boy, I bet you if they had a guy like Derek White to go along with, or DeJounte Murray to go along with Victor Wembanyama, they might be a better than 5-win team, right? Maybe not a freak of nature team, but definitely better than 5 wins. But, if I'm a Spurs fan and I was at that game tonight, I saw the Wembanyama show, I saw the Celtics show, and I saw Tatum and Brown ball out. That's kind of all you can ask for at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Wembanyama, it's kind of insane to watch because he's doing everything that a guy like KD would do, for example, but he's doing it at 7'3".
Right.
And the one play where it was the dunk that he had from like the circle of the free throw line, which was insane, where he was just like floating in the air for a few minutes, which I kind of thought Derek White was going to get the chase down block, but then I realized, Wembanyama's 7'3", he's not going to block that. But yeah, he's just such a special player. Like he's such a good player. I really hope in the next like year or two he gets an actual like competent team around him, because I like Devin Vassell. I think Keldon Johnson is a good supporting piece, but you need a legitimate point guard around Wembanyama, just somebody that can get him the ball. And I don't think Malachi Branham or Jeremy Sohan or Trey Jones is really the guy to be that point guard to get Wembanyama the ball. Honestly, if he had a guy like Marcus Smart, that would be kind of, not like Marcus Smart exactly, but a guy like him who can just like facilitate, who can get him the ball and, just be a supporting piece, because that's all you really need.
Point guard. They need a point guard. We were literally, I wish we had this recorded on the show before we came in here and talked on the show, because we always talk before and after the show. And sometimes when we talk, it feels like those could be segments in itself. But before the show, they're relying on Tyus Jones's little brother, Trey Jones, to be he's their top point guard. And at the beginning of the season, of course, they were running Jeremy Sohan at point guard, and that just wasn't working. He's not a point guard in any manner whatsoever. He's more of a 2-guard / forward. But the Spurs, they need a point guard. They need a legitimate first string starting point guard. They don't need a bench guy. They don't need a third stringer. They need a starting point guard, straight up. That should be number one priority, either at the trade deadline or during the offseason. I highly doubt the trade deadline is going to produce that for them because of how bad they are and the potential to be so high in the lottery. However, going into next year, when you have that high lottery pick, Spurs, pick a forward, right? Number one, get length, get more length, get a forward, and in the offseason, go get an established point guard. No young point guards either, unless there is a guy who you do feel very confident with. Even Scoot Henderson in this scenario, say Scoot Henderson was in this next draft, I don't know if I would feel confident with Scoot Henderson and Wembanyama together. Say if he was in this next draft, I want them to go get an established point guard, not a rookie point guard, an established point guard. Use the pick on a wing, and all of a sudden you have wing, Wembanyama, established point guard, and that looks a lot better in the West than Jeremy Sohan, Trey Jones, and Vassell. And, well, they're going to still have Vassell and Keldon Johnson, but just relying on these guys to be consistent ball handlers is not working. They're off-ball complementary players. But I do have, not the video queued up because I don't know if we're going to be hit with any infringement for the video, but I do have a photo of what we were talking about, or what Ian was talking about. Oh, kind of a little bit production miscue there, but you see what's going on in that photo.
Derek White made a business decision.
Just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous.
Put that
you think
back up. That looks absolutely photoshopped. That looks like you cropped like Victor Wembanyama and you just put him on top of Derek White. That just looks so photoshopped. It's not even funny. That's ridiculous.
Derek White made a very good business decision in the situation. Honestly, though, could you imagine if he tried to take a charge in that situation?
Oh, he would have been dead.
Like Wembanyama would have jumped over him. It looked like. Like if Wembanyama was in the dunk contest, I would take Derek White out there and try to jump over him.
That's unbelievable. That's unlike something I don't think I've ever seen before. That's unreal. And you know,
there's no way he's getting to that ball.
6 threes.
You have to stack another Derek White on top of him for him to actually try to block that.
I think we could probably come up with that later, right? We've come up with that.
Yeah, if you can Photoshop
not on the
another.
Show. We were not on the show, but
Photoshop another Derek White on top of him, and then
check us out on IG afterwards, right? Celtics Rising, Celtics Every Day. I and Angelo over here, one of our pages will have,
or all of us, we can collab on it.
Yeah, let's all collab. You guys see it right here, the collab meeting. We'll all collab on a post of Derek White being stacked on top of himself to actually go and block Wembanyama, because Derek White is no small human. That's the thing about Victor Wembanyama making all these other players look small, is that when you actually go down by an NBA court and stand there next to other NBA players who are more in the Brown, Tatum height range, they are massive. They're massive in themselves, right. And they're standing next to this player who's just as skilled as them, which is just insane to think about. Really.
Derek White.
And he's towering over them.
Derek White on why he didn't go up on the block with Wembanyama. Quote, "I'm not an idiot."
Yeah, awesome. That was a smart choice. But yeah, I think
right.
I think because it's crazy that we see that, but even Porzingis, I went to the Celtics Knicks game. It was right after the play-in tournament, and I was just watching Porzingis taking threes from half court and draining him, and he's 7'3", and he's a massive human, an insanely looking human in real life. So right. it's just kind of insane that guys like Porzingis and Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, guys like that, they're just insanely talented at basketball, and it's just insane to watch.
I'm personally excited for the Oklahoma City Thunder matchup. Now, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. We'll go down that OKC rabbit hole later in the post game when we actually talk about our next game, but I feel like they run some parallels to the old Celtics, where it's they're kind of building in that sense. Just a little bit.
I don't understand why so many people are overlooking this Oklahoma City game. This, in my opinion, is one of the best matchups so far this season. I'm really excited for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Thunder are my league pass team, so I watch a lot of Oklahoma City Thunder. These guys are fun. These guys are fast. These guys are athletic. They're young. They're the second youngest team in the entire association, yet they're 22-9, second in the Western Conference. These guys are well coached. These guys have the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having an MVP type season. get guys like Lou Dort, Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren, who's making a run for Rookie of the Year. I mean, this is a really fun but young Oklahoma City team who's quite successful. And might I add, they just blew out the defending champions on the road the other night in Denver.
Yep.
They won 2 games in Denver. They won. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander had a game winner not too long ago, a couple weeks. Actually, this is their schedule. This is going to be tough for the Celtics coming up because the Thunder, they went to Denver. SGA hit the game winner. They play throughout Christmas break. Well, I don't know if y'all have Christmas break anymore. I don't have Christmas break anymore, but what would normally be Christmas break if anybody's in school? Through that stretch, they played at home the whole time, like the Celtics. They played at home the whole time. Well, before the West Coast road trip, right? They played at home the whole time. And now they go on the road against Denver again. So Denver, they play at home, and then Denver again 2 weeks later. They win both of those games. They play another home game, and now they play us. So there's a little bit of home cooking there for the Oklahoma City Thunder before we play them on Tuesday, January 2nd. But, pass it over to you because we are kind of going down this rabbit hole with the Thunder because let's face it, this Spurs game, look at the score. Look at the lead tracker. I mean, we're going to talk about player of the game in a little bit, but let's talk about the Thunder. Why are we talking about this Spurs team?
Let's speed run player of the game, and then we'll just talk about
for real
for the rest of the time.
Player of the game was actually kind of tough tonight, and I think we all went sort of back and forth on it, and we all had different opinions, but came to a conclusion that it should be Jaylen Brown tonight in San Antonio on New Year's Eve. 24 points for Jaylen Brown, 6 rebounds, 3. I believe that should be 3 assists and 2 steals on the night. So those stats are actually wrong up there as they're presented, unfortunately. However, 9 of 13 from the floor and 4 of 6 from 3. Jaylen Brown wins player of the game, 24-6, and a lot of players could have walked away with player of the game in this one. However, Jaylen Brown takes it away because of his efficiency. And also, during this stretch of play for Jaylen Brown in December, he's coming up with some of the best play of his entire career. And I kind of talked about it before we jumped on here, that this is kind of a moment for Jaylen Brown and the Celtics where I don't believe too many people are paying attention, but in the background of the league, him and the Celtics, they're starting to become a team, and he's becoming a player where not too many teams know how to stop the team or player on any given night.
Yeah, I think it starts with, and I was going to say this about Derek White, but since we're talking about Jaylen Brown, it still applies to him as well. Through these last 12 games for Jaylen Brown, he's averaging 25 points on 55, 39, and 77 shooting splits. 55 field goal, 39% from deep, and 77% from the foul line. That's insane. Through the last dozen games, we talk about a stretch from Jaylen Brown. This is some of the best Jaylen Brown we've ever seen. And you mentioned that, Seamus. And I don't think it's something that we take lightly. I think the efficiency is just tremendous. Besides tonight, where he shot 53.8% from the field, the last 3 games, he shot over 60%, 68%, 69%, and 61% on 16 shots, 13 shots, and 23 shots. That's NBA 2K numbers. That is video game-like numbers, shooting numbers from Jaylen Brown. His efficiency shooting the 3 ball as well has been very well. He shot 83%, 100%, 40%. Rough night, 28% last game against Indiana in that play-in tournament game. But nonetheless, Jaylen Brown has been phenomenal. He shot 2 of 2 tonight, and we talk about Jason Tatum so much, not shooting the 3 ball, being aggressive, and that's when he's at his best. But Jaylen Brown is one of the best offensive players when he's attacking the basket, not only on the fast break, but also in the half-court set. When Jaylen Brown's aggressive, he gets to that mid-high post game, and he rises up. He's just so efficient at doing so. So tonight, for him to shoot 9 of 13 from the field, 2 of 2 from deep, and 4 of 6 from the foul line, that is absolutely huge for the Celtics. And to me, that high efficiency as well as that high production with the rebounds, assists, and the steals as well is why I think I lean towards him tonight for player spotlight.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, Jaylen Brown, he's just locked in right now. He's making everything look easy. Every single shot that's going up is just, it looks like it's going to go in. Like, there are times where if Jaylen Brown is having like an off game, like you'll see like a lot of shots that just like don't even hit the rim in
Right.
some cases. But right now, Jaylen Brown, and he's quietly had like really, really good stretchy games recently. So I think, by the time the end of the year, it's kind of going to be like last year, because by the end of the year, we're all going to be like, when it comes down to like all NBA voting and Jaylen Brown gets voted on the all NBA team, you're like, huh, why is he there? And then you look at his statistics and you look at the way he's playing, and it's like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. So
Right.
that there's a reason why he's an all NBA player. There's a reason why he got the contract that he did. And there's a reason why the Celtics are winning. It's because he plays at a high level.
Jaylen Brown is for real. I just want to go on a whole Jaylen Brown tangent for player of the game, because this man deserves all of his flowers. And there was a lot of talk at the beginning of the year about Jaylen Brown, maybe, wanting to get his shot up, wanting to prove people wrong that this $304 million contract was an overpay, which to me, looking at what the standards are for paying players, and especially a homegrown player like Jaylen Brown re-signing with the Celtics, it's just the contract you have to sign him to, folks. I know it says $304 million, but it's the max deal in which he deserves and is ultimately going to get for a team he's been to the Eastern Conference Finals with multiple times in a row, next to Jason Tatum, who will command the same amount, if not more, money by the time his contract comes due. But different contract for Tatum off court. We don't want Tatum signing that contract. I don't know, maybe, I don't know. But ultimately, the contract Jaylen Brown signed is what they had to give him, and I believe that his play at the beginning of the year was unfairly rated amongst the fan base and amongst social media. However, now in December, all of the month of December, from the start to now, the Sixers game all the way to the Spurs game, you fit in both of those games at the beginning and the end, he's been super efficient, super effective in his decision making at the beginning of the year. Rightfully so. Some people were trashing on some of the shot selection within his game, and I think he's eliminated all of the bad shots from his arsenal. And tonight, he only took 13 attempts. And this is something that also sticks out to me about Jaylen Brown. His 3-point attempts, if you look at the beginning of the season to now, he understands when it is his time within the offense to take a 3-point attempt. Because at the beginning of the year, much along with the rest of the team, the 3-point attempts seemed very chucking, just all chucking, right? And it didn't seem like it was coming within the flow of the offense. They didn't seem like they were getting the best shot available. And it seemed like you could either make another pass or drive, right, with a guy right in your face, any given player, specifically Jaylen Brown. And I believe within his game, he's just gotten so much better at making good decisions offensively and defensively. He's brought the intensity as well necessary to be that high level defender at this level, which is the NBA. And I don't understand. I mean, national TV games definitely matter. The more national TV games a team receives, the more praise or hate they're going to receive on social media. And we are 1-2 in national TV games this month, but those are only 2 losses. But Jaylen Brown, I believe, should be receiving way more praise from every single media source than he currently is. Because at the beginning of the season, nobody had any trouble hating on what he was doing. And the emoji. Yeah, they posted all this. Jaylen Brown, cold. Oh, geez. But right now, it's like, where's the fire emojis around Jaylen Brown? I want to see the fire emojis. That's what I want to see out of the internet in regards to Jaylen Brown, because he ultimately deserves it after this entire month of December. But I know I went on a long tangent. We were supposed to talk about the Thunder, but this is Celtics Talk Weekly post game. And Jaylen Brown is a big reason why this whole squad is always motivated to be on here and present, because you look at his progression, what he does every single night. How can you not be motivated from this team?
Yeah, it's just Jaylen Brown and his consistency, and that's something that's going to continue. It's like a trend upwards, right? It's like it's like something that's like, oh, this can't get any better. And he just keeps getting better each and every game, not even each and every season. So that's really important for the Celtics going forward because, listen, say what we want. We can have a great regular season and stuff, but when the playoffs come, we need that consistency. And right now, the regular season is when you build consistency. And I hate to sound like a coach here, sound like Coach Missoula, but I agree when Missoula says it's about continuing to build good habits. And that's really what it's about. You have to learn these lessons. You have to go through these trials and tribulations throughout the regular season. And you have to let that mentally prepare you for the playoffs. And, to see Jaylen Brown with the consistency and as well as Derek White, it's just huge for the Celtics, and I feel like it's so refreshing, right? We've talked about this off camera, not only here but in the group chat as well, about how fresh this Celtics team feels, right? Like we're no longer stressing 24/7. We're getting the same consistent progress from each and every player on this team, whether that's Jason Tatum or Luke Cornett, right? Like guys 1 through 15 are ready to go, and it's refreshing to see, and it's also. What's even more refreshing is we're away from that like 10 to 15 game mark that Seamus mentioned earlier in the show, right? It's like we're now seeing this. Now we're upwards of 30 games. I don't know what it is exact. What's 26 plus 6? 32. So we're over 30 games worth of Celtics basketball, and it's just progressing, right? Look at the Celtics schedule. The Celtics have had the number one strength of schedule, which means the toughest schedule in the entire association. And the Celtics are 26-6. 26-6, the league's best record with the league's toughest strength of schedule. Go look at our 6 losses. I'm not throwing excuses out here. Loss is a loss. It happened in the past. Three or four of those games have been in overtime. 3 or 4 of those games. Celtics have not gotten blown out once this season. Go the Orlando Magic game. If you were an actual Celtics fan or even an NBA fan and watched that game, the Celtics were up by a dozen. The Celtics were up double digits a majority of that game until a 17-0 run by the Magic.
And Porzingis got hurt in that game.
And Porzingis got
hurt. Right before that run.
No Holiday.
So
yeah,
it's
Holiday didn't play either, but.
Yeah, two of the biggest offseason additions for us, Holiday and Porzingis casually didn't play.
Right. So it's like, okay, you look at the Celtics team and it's like, these guys haven't gotten run out of the gym. You look at that Detroit game. Celtics were getting ran out of the gym. Second half comes around. Third quarter Celtics. Oh my God! We're down 21. We can't win a third quarter to save our life. Celtics came and absolutely blasted the Pistons in the second half. Celtics walked away with their 16th home victory in a row. So it's like you look at the Celtics team and the good habits are consistently being built. And that's really important for the Celtics. And I really, really hope that they continue this. A 3-1 West Coast trip, by the way, is absolutely huge for the Celtics. 3-1 West Coast trip, 3 double-digit victories for the Celtics, 1 lost in overtime when you didn't have Porzingis. You were up by double digits a majority of that game. You unfortunately blew it in the last 4 minutes. You take it, you live with it. Celtics 26-6 going into Oklahoma City. Big game, playing the second seed in the Western Conference on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean the Celtics are in every single game this season, and that's something that I know. I hate to say like, oh, last year this team would have done this. Last year this team would have done that. I feel like it's kind of a cop out sometimes. But if we're being honest, last year's team, like we kind of said before, it kind of felt like we were kind of like pulling teeth sometimes watching the Celtics play. Like it just kind of felt, I don't know, maybe they just felt like they were bigger than what they were at the time or something like that. I don't know. It was not a fun viewing experience for most of the season last year. And when it comes to this season, it just feels different. It just feels like it's like kind of like a breath of fresh air. Everyone's kind of matured now. Everybody has their contracts. Everybody is just at the point of their careers where they just want to win. And I'm not saying last year's team didn't want to win, but it just feels like this season, this team is just destined for greatness. And I don't know, the vibes around this team, it's just fun vibes.
I will say it helps, and I'm knocking on every inch of wood I have in my apartment complex here. It also helps how the Celtics have been able to stay healthy. Yes, you have had guys in and out of the lineup the first 32 games. But like, it's like last year, it was so tough. As much as we loved Robert Williams, it was so tough to watch Rob sit out the first half of the year, and then to ask him to come back and be our starting center in an important stretch of the regular season and then into the playoffs. I don't know. It was just kind of like a big ask. And then Malcolm Brogdon with his elbow and his ankle, and Smart with his ankle in the season. And I'm naming guys that aren't on the roster, but it's true. It's what we went through last year. It's the reality of it, and it's the past. And now it's just, again, Ian, I love the word refreshing, because that's exactly what this feels like right now. And again, knock on all the wood I have in my apartment, but this team really has come together.
I believe too, the Orlando Magic loss, like even looking at all of our losses and for as
And
great,
I think,
for as
actually,
great,
one thing about that Orlando loss, it was the in-season tournament game, so of course the Magic were going to run up the score. That's kind of an asterisk. So,
well,
but
I was thinking about this, right, in regards to that game, and a lot of things in the NBA, NFL, and sports, like the schedule matters. Like just because you're playing on this day against this team, like you can look at it from a very like straight line perspective on that regard. Like, okay, they're here on this day, but where were the teams before, right? And ultimately, that event, right, or afterwards, right, that event in Orlando where the Magic completely run up the score on the Celtics at the end of the game. They go on a 17-0 run. They don't necessarily blow us out, but it feels like a blowout in the second half for sure. And the Celtics have a little bit of a control of that game. However, because of the final result of that game, the next game, the Celtics had to come out and absolutely whoop the Bulls. And I felt as if that was kind of a moment in the season where it's like, we're not just going to lay down and not be competitive. We're not just going to be this like, just walk in here, like whatever, we own the place team. It's like, no, we're going to compete. If the Bulls are going to allow us to score and beat them by 30 points, and we're going to go ahead and be in the in-season tournament, in which we eventually, of course, made the bracket. And we played that game in Indiana too, which I thought was super valuable in adding a playoff-like game to the schedule. Both of those events, building the team camaraderie of competing and actually going for something rather than just, crossing your legs and folding your arms and going, I guess we're going to play, the Knicks on whatever night. They go for it and they gain another game from it. That's extremely important. Unfortunately, a loss. But, I mean, the Celtics in that regard for that game, it was almost a net positive in the end, because they had to come back from what happened in Orlando and come back from that adversity in a dominant way. And if that game never happens, maybe the Celtics, they don't have those moments in the season. And that's not another moment where they will look back at the end of the year and go, in a tough, crucial moment, and go, look what we did here. Look what we did in this moment. Look what we did in that moment. Look what this history and the times we have together as a team. That's all valuable in moments later on down the line in the playoffs, closer near the end of the season, when things get tougher and tougher and tougher, when you have that experience under your belt. And of course, the entire cohesion of the team being on the same page and having the memories of, this guy has my back in these moments, right? That's super big for a basketball team. And I like that the Celtics, even though they lost that game, the situation that was created from the entire event was, I think, a net positive for the entire team, going down to Orlando, losing, and then coming back against the Bulls, winning, and then eventually going on to play Indiana, where they unfortunately lost again. But of course, great atmosphere in Indiana. But the Celtics next game, they face another one of those teams where I feel like we talked about Orlando a little bit, we mentioned Indiana in this broadcast, but this next team, the Oklahoma City, they both start with O's. The Oklahoma City Thunder on the Celtics schedule next on January 2nd. They're kind of another young, fast, athletic, springy team. The Celtics could, they never know. You could find themselves in a matchup where they are one of the best teams in the West. I feel like people aren't necessarily giving them their respect whatsoever because of how young they are. But we've seen the Celtics back in 17-18. If you're young and you're here, like Tatum and Brown, they were here with a talented team the way the Thunder are. SGA, he's been an all-star already, an all-NBA player. He's established in the league. That's a team to be afraid of, and I believe the Celtics are surely going to have their hands full down in OKC, and you never know. It could be one of those games where we look at the opponent and go, man, the Celtics against an up-and-coming opponent, look what they looked like. But we'll have to see come Tuesday. Justin, I know you like this Thunder team and have talked about them a lot, so I'm going to go to Ian. I feel like I just pump-faked you entirely. But I'm going to go to Ian on the Thunder because I was supposed to let him talk earlier about OKC. And went on a whole tangent about Jaylen Brown, which was deserving. But Ian, going into this OKC game, what do you see from this Thunder team this season that excites you and about this game on Tuesday?
I mean, just like everything about this Thunder team is exciting. Like we said, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, MVP candidate. Chet Holmgren, probably going to win Rookie of the Year this season. Jalen Williams, I'm a huge fan of Jalen Williams, the guard, not the big man, but the guard Jalen Williams. I'm a huge fan of him. Honestly, I feel like if he had his own team, he would be just an insane player. Which is great because that's why he's on OKC. OKC has, they have 3 future All-Stars, in my opinion, on their team right now. And they're just so young. They're so much fun to watch. Everyone on that team is fun to watch. And they just play fast. They're just a fun team. Lou Dort, he's kind of like their Marcus Smart, for their team. And the Celtics sometimes have problems against teams like the Thunder. For example, like the Minnesota game. Minnesota was kind of like a fast team. They run up and down the court, and sometimes they just weren't able to win it in overtime. Or Indiana, for example. Indiana, fast-paced, up and down the court the entire game. So it's just kind of one of those things where hope the Celtics got their cardio in and they're ready to do some running because it's going to be a fast-paced game against OKC. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he always goes off on the Celtics, it feels like. So, I don't know. It could be a pretty fun game.
Yeah, this OKC team has a lot of threats. Another threat on their bench they have is Isaiah Joe. I think he's
my God, Isaiah Joe. He's so good.
I'm so glad he's not in Philly.
Cason Wallace.
They had him in Philly.
I was just gonna say Cason Wallace is another one.
Shout out my boy Cason Wallace, enjoyer.
It's a little interesting, and I think you can also attest Chet Holmgren being back and also Jalen Williams, the power forward, playing exceptionally well as well. But Pokusevski has kind of fallen out of the rotation a little bit and spent a lot of time in the G League. His progression hasn't really been up to par. But I think when I look at this OKC team, not only do I see the second youngest team in the association, but I also see a well-built team, a very well-constructed and balanced roster. And I also see a very well-constructed front office. I think Sam Presti, another Massachusetts native, has done a phenomenal job at doing the correct version of a rebuild, right? It's not going out and going out and making all these trades and buying all these big-time players and hoping it's going to work. And, you had your Carmelo Anthonys, your Kevin Durant's, your James Hardens, your Westbrooks, your Chris Pauls and Schroeders and stuff. Didn't work. They're building. They got all these draft picks. They got all these assets. They have all these young players, and they're rebuilding correct. And they're 22-9 right now. And I'll tell you what, through 30 games, they were a play-in team last year, made some noise in the play-in tournament, put up a great fight, nearly making it into the playoffs. This team is going to make the playoffs, not the play-in. These guys are a serious top 5 team in the Western Conference. I don't know if I put them up championship level with the Denver Nuggets when it comes playoff time, if the Phoenix Suns can get healthy. But this OKC team is the youngest team, but they are also the realest team. They are the real deal out west. I don't know why this game, is this even on an NBA TV? It's not, right? So I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing the Bulls and the Sixers play for the 1,000th time already this season, and we're only 30 games in. I saw the Pistons and Celtics play on national TV the other night, but I'm not seeing the first seed in the Eastern Conference and the second seed in the Western Conference go head-to-head at 8 o'clock p.m. on Tuesday on NBA TV.
Or TNT. Should be on TNT.
Or TNT, none of the above. They're not playing. This game is not on national TV. This is a League Pass game, NBC Sports Boston game. But I'm excited, boys. I can't wait for this game. Also, if you remember, this OKC team has given Boston trouble in the past, home and away. Last year, the Celtics got absolutely demolished on the OKC's Paycom Arena court. They just, I mean, it wasn't even a ball game. It wasn't even close. If we're talking about blowouts, how this team hasn't gotten blown out yet this season. Well, last season when the Celtics went to Paycom Arena, they absolutely got tossed around this game. Judging this was second night of a back-to-back right after the latter game.
They were down by
but
didn't they lose by like 50 or something like that?
They gave up 157 points in that game. It was a rough game all around for the Celtics. But I'm excited Tuesday. Celtics riding a 6-game winning streak. The Oklahoma City Thunder. Let me see what their record. They're riding a 4-game win streak, 8-2 last 10 games with a 13-4 home record. It's going to be a tough game, but Celtics got to go in there. Hopefully they're fully healthy. Hopefully Drew's back. Hopefully Tatum and Porzingis. Hopefully their ankles are feeling good. Hopefully Brown's back is feeling good. Didn't seem to have a problem tonight. And you know, they're going to have to be healthy for this young and springy Thunder squad.
Yeah, and looking at the Thunder team, I mean, in the games we played against them last year, the first game at the Garden was a pretty interesting one.
It
really was. I remember watching that game.
That was the game where Derek White and Peyton Pritchard just had like 10 consecutive steals at one point, like right at the end of the third and into the fourth.
Yep.
That is literally like when I picture that game, I can picture Derek White.
I picture Derek White's 3 and like the slow motion of him going back with the 3.
But that game was like, I feel like this is kind of one of those moments where like some of the interesting smaller market teams are really not going to get their praise. This is how stars end up in other markets, particularly New York, LA, and even us like Boston markets, because Oklahoma City and Boston, to me, this is a matchup that is similar to the Boston Celtics back in 2017-18 range, and now the Boston Celtics, what they developed into, and you're looking at the Thunder going, they could have the same trajectory in where their team goes, because you just go down the roster, it's like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is basically their Tatum. Now, he's obviously a completely different player than Tatum. I will disclaim this about a lot of these players, is that they're a little bit different from their counterparts that I'm going to compare them to. Jalen Williams, to me, is like Jaylen Brown, just a little bit, right? Chet Holmgren, he's like young KD. He's like young KD for them. And you could argue that, you know, Chet Holmgren and SGA is their Brown and Tatum, but I feel like Chet Holmgren's on just a whole different level in that Jalen Williams and SGA, they're almost like the Brown and Tatum, and that they have another level of player that they have with them in Chet Holmgren, who could be, like I said, the young KD. After that, you have Lou Dort. Lou Dort is like Marcus Smart. He's literally Marcus Smart. I mean, he's the OKC Western Conference Marcus Smart. That is how I see Luguentz Dort. I wanted the Celtics to draft him so badly back in 2019. He went undrafted. OKC picks him up. And, of course, he's 4th in minutes on their roster. And after that, Josh Giddey, he could be Jabari Bird. Who knows? I have no idea. But Josh Giddey doesn't work out. Cason Wallace is sitting right there, ready to take over his spot. And I will say this about Josh Giddey is he shoots 32% from 3, whereas Cason Wallace shoots 42%. So
17%.
Some you know, just maybe some changing of the guard could happen there at some point in time. But I feel like this team runs some parallels to some old Celtics teams we've seen, and the trajectory is certainly there.
I can see Lou Dort being maybe not as good as Jaylen Brown. I could see him being a similar-esque type player as Jaylen Brown, where Lou Dort, known for his defense, he can be a very explosive, athletic two-guard/3-guard wing player. He can play defense. His offense is starting to come along. I'm excited. I really like Lou Dort. There was some trade rumors about him, being traded last year. I'm happy he stuck around, and I hope they really keep him. But I don't know. Again, I sound like a broken record, but this Thunder team is way too fun to overlook. And Celtics are going to have. It's
going to be a good game.
They're going to have their hands full.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a fun game. It's a game that they should have on national TV, but I don't know. The NBA doesn't think logically sometimes about their matchups on national TV. So
the problem is we need to bring like actual it's not a problem that will ever solve itself really, because in reality it's like the NBA, like Chicago and Philadelphia playing each other over Oklahoma City and Boston. Like Chicago, you could say, that market hits, just throwing out numbers. This isn't going to be like official numbers or anything, but you could have a Chicago market that hits 6 million people and versus a Philadelphia market that hits 5 million people. And those are two markets that hit 11 million people between the two of them on NBA TV. But then Boston, you could have 6 million people in their market, but then OKC, they don't even have a million. So it's like 11 million versus like 6 point whatever million or 7 million or 8 million. It's like, oh yeah, of course we're going to show the Bulls and the Sixers, but then the quality of the games, it's like they're just picking out market games. And it's like, oh, the Bulls and Sixers, they're going to
they
get the
want to
most market, but
strengthen they
their
want to
entertainment
strengthen Joel Embiid's MVP case when he plays bad teams, so that's why he's on national TV against the Bulls.
I don't know. Part of me, like, of course, it makes more sense to have the bigger markets play each other, like on national TV. However, I still think like a lot of the smaller market national TV games do a lot for growing the game, even in those markets and just in general. Because I mean, look at the Pacers; they don't have a national TV game. I don't believe they have one this whole season. I think that's what the statistic was, or two, right? And
Yeah, outside
they
of the
played the
play-in
in-season
game.
tournament 3 games on national TV, and during those 3 games, like people were absolutely amazed by them. And it's like, yeah, this team usually plays at 6 o'clock every night, or if you're on the East Coast, 7 o'clock every night, and you don't usually view them because the Celtics play at 8, and the bigger markets are on TV. And what are we talking about? It's the Lakers, the Warriors, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York. The Knicks are talked about. Even the Nets, the Bulls, all these teams in bigger markets are talked about more. But it's like, man, we have all these good players in OKC, Orlando, Indiana. These are all small market teams. Sacramento as well. Sacramento, the most
Love
fun I
watching
have watching
Sacramento
NBA
games.
games. Two teams I have the most fun. It's the Celtics, number one. Obviously, you saw that third quarter against the Pistons. That's like prime example. I'm even getting chills right now of why I love Celtics basketball. Is the entire Garden just collectively 20,000 fans standing on their feet at once, just yelling out anything while the Celtics just completely obliterate our opponent. The second most fun game to be at to watch in the NBA, Sacramento Kings. But guess what? Sacramento isn't that big of a market. Not too many people know about them. But it's light the beam every time they win. Every time they win, it's light the beam moment. And I feel as if all these small markets need to be uplifted just a little bit more. Just a little bit.
Like De'Aaron Fox should be talked about like they talk about SGA. Like that's how good De'Aaron Fox is, but nobody knows. So
everybody I like the talk whenever I hear Sacramento. I don't know why the talk is always Sabonis. It's never De'Aaron Fox, which I don't understand. Like anytime I hear or talk about Sacramento, it's always Sabonis. But on your point of these small market team, Seamus, it's funny you say that because these small market teams are the teams that Justin Lowe fears the Celtics playing most. Like when the Celtics it's not the Milwaukees. It's not it's not the Milwaukees, right? It's not the Phillies. It's not the Miamis. It's when I see a game on the schedule, it's the Orlando Magic. It's the Indiana Pacers. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Sacramento Kings. Even I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to even throw out the New Orleans Pelicans. Those are the interesting matchups in my opinion because not only yes, roster-wise, constructually, the Celtics might be more talented than those teams, but those Indiana Pacers teams, those Oklahoma City Thunder teams, and those Kings teams, those guys are pesky. Those guys are willing to throw it all on the line. Those guys are trying to prove themselves. And when those games are on national TV, they don't get a lot of national coverage like you mentioned. So they're going to want to try to play their hearts out and beat the Celtics and take them down. The Celtics have a target on their back, and there's no teams that would like to beat the Celtics better than those smaller mid-market teams like the Pacers, the Magic, the Thunder, and the Pelicans. So that's a great point, Seamus. I'm glad you brought that up.
I feel like we're kind of the Warriors too right now. Not in terms of our respect.
Boo, never bring the Warriors up. Boo, Seamus.
this is kind of good because we are like the Warriors in the sense of like when we come through nowadays, we're like the best team in the. Do you see a team that
teams
exists
sit up
right
in
now
their
better than
chairs when they
us?
see the Celtics on the schedule.
It's Denver, the defending champions, and then after that, it's like, okay, LeBron and AD are going to come into your house, and every time LeBron comes to your house is going to be a show. And like the other night, like literally in Minnesota last night, you had the whole show afterwards, pointing at the camera like that was the most insane moment of 2023, and it came on the second to last day on LeBron's birthday.
No, it wasn't. It was the time when LeBron was in Boston.
Actually,
basically,
no,
threw a temper tantrum.
You know
yeah,
what?
I was going to say that was first. This last moment was second.
Yeah, but Patrick Beverley grabbing the camera out of a camera person's
hand, was probably better than both of them.
That was probably better than the LeBron freakout. That was just so funny. The most Patrick Beverley thing ever happened. That's got to be funny.
But like these events, it's like that team, LeBron's coming in your house, the Nuggets are coming into your house with Jokic. Right. And I feel like the Celtics as just an all-around team, it's like, man, you're facing a team who's just slaughtering opponents right now, and it's a little tough.
It's in going to your Golden State point, and I don't mean this necessarily three-point shooting wise, but I mean this kind of constructually, right? Like it's like when we saw that Golden State team back in 2016, 2017 specifically, it's like holy crap, who do we guard? Like we can't double team anybody. That's when teams come into the TD Garden. That's the same thing you talk about with your top 5 to 6 players. Who can we leave? Who can we double team? We double team KP in the post. Oh, what does that do? That leaves Jason Tatum open on the wing. We double team Jason Tatum on the wing. What does that do? Oh, it leaves KP with the mismatch in the paint, and he can rise up over anybody that's not 7'4". So it's like, it's just unbelievable the versatility that we have on this roster. And it also, not to kind of go down this path in this rabbit hole, because I do think in the next month or two, we are going to have to start talking about this because it's that time of year, is where did the Celtics go at the trade market? Do they deal anybody with, in 32 games, we have 26 wins in the league's best record. We're 15 or 16-0 at home. Or do you kind of look at those end of the bench guys maybe like a Cornette? I don't think you should. Maybe a Sam Hauser, see what his trade value's at. Delano Banton, O'Shea Brissett, and see what you can get later down the line in the market. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I think we should save that for later on, but it is worth mentioning. But again, you have so many different weapons on the Celtics team.
Well, they were talking about it on the broadcast. They were talking about it, how teams will literally just let Porzingis stand at the free throw line and shoot over their smaller guards. Like, teams are just going to allow that because what else are you going to do? You're going to let Jason Tatum get to the rim. You're going to let Jaylen Brown go to the rim. You're going to let Derek White. And if you're guarding Porzingis, are you going to let Derek White have a wide open three on the corner? Are you going to let Drew Holiday, find his open shot? Are you going to let Al Horford open in the corner? Like, there's so many different things, so many different aspects to the Celtics team that teams have to worry about.
No doubt, because ultimately the Celtics, there's so much to be said about this team in regards to their ability to, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier where, it's kind of like this entire team is paid, and they're all veterans within their careers, and they all understand their role. And that's what also makes all of this talent. It's so easy to mesh together, and why it's so dominant is these players, like I said, they're all paid, they're all comfortable in their roles, and they know what to do. And this Celtics team, they're not exactly like the Warriors, because let's face it, the Warriors in that particular moment of time, they were a special squad. Kevin Durant, he played on the Warriors during a moment in which, his contract was just absolutely. Now we actually got Justin back on here. I'm just kind of like spitballing here for a second as Justin, we get him back on screen, because we had a little connection issue. But ultimately, what happened with the Warriors is they had a moment where they were paying Steph Curry $12 million, $11 million, the MVP of the league, and then at the same time they were they signed Kevin Durant during a 32% spike in the salary cap, and of course that's a special circumstance and why they were able to be an all-time great team. And the Celtics, that's what makes them so impressive to build this squad, is that it didn't really take a crazy NBA moment or a circumstance to build this team. It was Brad Stevens and, of course, Danny Ainge to start off, really going through every single point in the transaction window, right? Whether it's the trade deadline, whether it's the offseason at free agency, or during moments of time you can trade in the offseason. They built this team up from almost ground zero back 10 years ago. And right now, they're at their peak, and I believe that looking at the rest of the league, even the Nuggets are missing two players in which played phenomenally for them in the championship last year, Jeff Green and Bruce Brown. Those two players were absolutely crucial to their playoff run last year. And let's also remind people of this. Their playoff stack wasn't too crazy. Last year, Denver, going into the playoffs, they faced Minnesota, who's, of course, turned another corner now. They weren't like that last year. They go to the next round. They face Phoenix. They go to the Western Conference Finals. They face a 7-seed Lakers team. And then they meet the 8-seeded Heat in the finals. And the Nuggets, yes, they won a championship. Yes, they should still be considered the team to knock off for sure. But the Celtics, in terms of the talent they have right now after last offseason, I mean, the Celtics team, imagine them in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat last year, and then potentially facing the Nuggets in the finals. I think this Celtics team goes right up against the Nuggets in that finals series. And that's why I believe some teams should be looking at, and probably are looking at, the Celtics as probably the best team in the league to beat right now, even though the Nuggets won the championship last year. And to command that kind of respect on a nightly basis, it's certainly tough if you're the Celtics, because there's going to be a lot of games, even though we say this, the strength of schedule coming up is a lot lesser for the team. It's still a lot of schedule where the team needs to focus, engage themselves within the game, not take opponents too lightly. And of course, they're going to be facing some of the best games of the season from their opponents on the other end in terms of effort and execution.
That, Seamus? And I'm not saying you. Who thinks that this upcoming stretch for the Celtics is tough? Now, by no means I understand that this 3-game stretch between Toronto, San Antonio, and Detroit. Yes, those guys are sub 500. Those guys suck. I understand that. But you have the Oklahoma City Thunder, the 2nd seed in the West. You have back-to-back games against the Indiana Pacers, who have given the Celtics trouble. Tyrese Halliburton playing at an MVP level. Then you have a back-to-back against the 2nd-seeded Milwaukee Bucks and 1st-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves on a home-away, back-to-back. How is that? The Celtics schedule lightens up. How in any way, shape, or form is that light? How is that? Can somebody logically tell Justin Lowe how that is freaking logic? It weakens up. It weakens up. How? Where? Show me in the schedule where it weakens up, NBA fans. I want to know. The people are discrediting the Celtics. Oh, they got an easy schedule. Why is it every time I look at the freaking schedule, the Bucks and the Sixers are playing the freaking Wizards or the Spurs or the Pistons, for Christ's sakes? All right? How many times do I have to watch the Sixers play the damn Bulls? All right?
We got to actually dive in and see where the schedule gets light. I'm not going to dive into the schedule entirely, but say the last month of the season, I mean, last month of the season, we have Atlanta twice, Charlotte twice, Washington, we have Portland. That's the last month of the season. But I totally agree with you in regards to what is happening right now with the schedule, because the conversation is about statistically strength of schedule lightens up. But I agree where if you look at the schedule, it's the next couple of weeks
Next
are kind of
month
tough.
is
Like
tough.
until we face San Antonio again at home, or even that Raptor game. The Raptors are kind of. We'll see what they look like with RJ Barrett. They're 12-20 right now. I don't want to say we whooped them, but we could have whooped them. But that's a stretch right here. Oklahoma City, Utah's coming into the Garden. Kelly Olynyk, hello, Kelly Olynyk.
Future
Revenge
Celtic
game for
again.
Danny Ainge. I can totally see it. 100% coming up. 2 games in Indiana, which we already lost. They're a young up and coming team. That's going to be kind of a benchmark. And the Celtics, what do they look like in both of those games? Do they just drop one of those games? Do they play both of them? Do they win? Minnesota, Milwaukee. That's a back-to-back.
Home and away.
That's gonna suck ass.
Did we
Home
talk
and away
about this? Did we talk about this off camera the other night about this little 2-game stretch here, back-to-back, Minnesota, Milwaukee? What are you doing, NBA?
I know.
Although they probably didn't think Minnesota
like,
was going to
I
be
will
as good as they are.
I was going to say, I think I had this conversation with Franco potentially the other day, because I think I said the same thing where I'm like, Minnesota, that could have been an easy matchup on the first night, but it's not. It's a gauntlet. And then we face Ime. Guys, we face Ime.
That's going to suck.
I believe it's the first matchup between the Celtics and Ime
twice in 2 weeks.
Right. And in the only easy game in that schedule, supposedly, is against a 7'6" center with the same jump shot and handles as KD. It's like,
but no, and then you play Denver, and then Houston and Dallas on a back-to-back. You get 2 days off, then you travel to Miami, and you close out the month playing the Clippers, the Pelicans, and the Pacers. How is this an easy month coming up? I have no clue. I have no clue.
I don't know.
The majority of them are road games.
We could talk about this till next year, but it's just one of those things where I think people just see the names of the teams and they don't actually watch the games and actually know how good some of these teams are. So that's kind of where people kind of go from. That's kind of people's thinking sometimes, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, but honestly, we're going to have a lot more time to talk about all of these games coming up, because we'll be in here more and more talking about them individually when they pass our schedule. And of course, a lot of these games, I love talking about them ahead of time, because, when the time comes due, we'll know about the vibe around the team at this time versus when we talk about them and what we may have thought about the game. And sometimes it's very funny and amusing to see some of our thoughts. But that pretty much wraps up our show today. The Celtics, I can't believe that we didn't really talk about the Celtics and Spurs for a majority of the show, because let's face it, guys, the Spurs are awful. And the Celtics, they took care of business in this game. And it really never felt like a contest at any point in time. But as we log off the show here, I'm going to go around to everyone's final thoughts. And Justin, in your return to the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame, if you guys were not here earlier in the show, Justin making his return after an entire month away. He's back on the show tonight, but we'll start with you on your final thoughts for the Celtics.
This was just a good old-fashioned bully ball game from the Celtics. No Drew Holiday. Porzingis had a rough game, but the Celtics weathered the storm. Guys 1 through 15 were ready. They were able to step up and just get a good win, right? Celtics are better than the Spurs. We knew this. They showed it here tonight. Thank God this wasn't a national televised game. It would have been a waste of our time. But Celtics got a much-needed win, their 6th straight victory to close out the year. They get a tough one coming up on Tuesday in Oklahoma City, but hopefully we can go into that game, dominate, and be healthy.
The San Antonio Spurs court was an abomination to watch.
Terrible. I texted that to Seamus right away. I said,
It reminded me of like an old bowling alley. Like just the colors on the court and those jerseys and that court is just ugly as sin. So that's my final thought. Can't believe they have Wembanyama playing like that in those uniforms on that court in his rookie season. That's just.
I thought the court was a little 70s.
Well, it was 70s-ish. It was
like
very 70s-ish. You could tell by the sun in the middle of the court. You could tell by the. You know what I hated? The weirdest thing about it was there was so many colors. It had the blue on the outside. It had the orange on the inside. It had like the parquet with the new San Antonio Spurs logo. Then it had like orange in the free throw line. It had like brown inside the circle. It was just, I don't know who came up with that design, but it was not good. So
And they used it for the in-season
was
tournament
so
as
gross.
well. Not the exact court, but the
So
same
gross.
colors.
And those and the brown,
they were a part of
the
the
brown warm-ups that they had the players wearing, those were disgusting.
They sucked. They sucked. And the Spurs
So we complain
best-
about Celtics having only like green, white, and black, but I'm kind of happy we only have those colors and not having
I'm not complaining.
brown.
I'm not complaining whatsoever. I absolutely. I mean, imagine having a brown court. I mean, that sucked. It was a terrible court. I texted right away. I said to Seamus, "This court sucks." I saw a glimpse of it in the opening credits, and it was just god awful. It was terrible. It was putrid. It's terrible.
And we'll see some better courts moving forward, though, because unless the Oklahoma City Thunder or I don't believe we have an alternate court. Every year, isn't it like, oh, we're going to have an alternative court outside of the in-season tournament court? It's like we never, ever get one. And I feel like maybe we should be thankful for that, seeing some other courts around the league for sure. But like I said, moving forward, a lot more design that will be in front of our faces, a lot more Celtics basketball coming up in front of us. And that's pretty much all we got here for you guys today on the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show for the Celtics and the Spurs. The Celtics, of course, coming out with the victory 134-101 in San Antonio. They do it on the last day of 2023, a great 2023 for the Celtics all around. Didn't, of course, come out with the title, but you never know. This year, guys, it might be our year for the title. Oh, no. There we go. It might be our year, guys. 2024 champions, the Boston Celtics. We are manifesting it
Jack
here
to change his
on this
right
Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show. Yes, Jack, just get another one. I mean, who cares? Just get another one. We'll somehow fund it, right? I mean, what is $50 tattoo? Just get one right below it. Get one on the forearm and go ahead and get one there. But that's all we got for you guys here today. And for 2023, we'll be back, of course, next year, not next season, but next year in 2024. Happy New Year's to everybody and the entire viewership, Celtics Nation, Celtics Talk Weekly. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. Right down here, Justin making his return. Justin Lowe, a.k.a. Celtics Rising. And Ian right here. Go follow him as well on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Follow all of us on every application. Ian, of course, at Ianangelo. But that is all we have for you guys. Thank you for listening to the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show. And as I always say, go Celtics.